fuck. Oh, no. Oh, shit. Shit. Shit, shit, shit. If there's one thing I like, it's weird little obscure horror games that are seemingly looked over or forgotten in their time. It's always kind of interesting to find these unknown or forgotten games where there's like barely any information or marketing about them. A good example of this would be the recent resurgence of Pathologic, which up until a few years ago I only knew of as a small, relatively unknown and janky as hell art piece. I love seeing games like that get the recognition they deserve years down the line, even if Pathologic is still a little bit jank and its sequel has its fair share of problems as well. But Pathologic isn't the topic of this video. I'll maybe get around to that eventually, but in my opinion it's been done quite enough by people with a much higher production value than I could ever muster. No, instead today we're going to talk about a game I'm sure 99% of people forgot minutes after it was announced, something that I'm fairly certain a large group of people didn't even know existed. That is, the Blair Witch video game. Blair Witch. This little janky mess of a game came out on August 30th, 2019, to a critical meh, as it came out with very little marketing or seemingly much hope of recognition. It was made by the devs over at Bloober Team, the same people behind games such as Observer or Layers of Fear, both of which I've heard about and I need to play, but I haven't yet gotten around to. When I heard that they were attached to the project, I admit my interest sparked. That, on top of when it was originally shown off, I was maybe one of the only people to see it and think, that looks kinda cool. After that, of course, I promptly forgot about it until a few months later when browsing the store, it caught my eye. And I am a sucker for small budget horror, with big ideas and small monies. Thing is, I'm not exactly a Blair Witch fan by any means. In fact, outside of this game, I've really never engaged with the media in any way. Heck, I've never even seen the movie, or movies, I guess? This got sequels? Point is, I'm not exactly the designated audience, or someone with nostalgia that went into this with any frame of reference on what to expect. And because of that, to me at least, I enjoyed this game a lot more than the general population I think did. That might also be because I have a pretty high tolerance for kind of unfinished and underpolished games from small developers, especially those of the more rustic Ukrainian variety. Regardless, this game received pretty meh review scores, and I don't know, it's kind of a shame to me that a project with some decent passion behind it will go unnoticed. Outside of me, I do doubt anybody past 2019 has even so much as thought about this game since launch, outside of, those who might be following the team for some reason. Okay, so a main overarching theme of this game. The only way I can really do this is to probably explain somewhat of the story, at least the opening bit to give you kind of an idea of what's going on. So because of that, I'm gonna give very, very light spoilers, I guess. The opening scene of the game, kind of a generic setup, but, just in case you care about that stuff. Anyway, this game opens up on a shot of our big generic white dude protagonist that has been the main character of every video game since like 2011, Ellis Lynch. Ellis is a good old ex-military, ex-police officer that is out driving down the winding little forest roads on the hunt for a lost little boy in them there woods. With him is his trusty good boy Bullet, a big old dog that is a main component of this whole rollicking adventure through the woods later on. You get a call from your girlfriend or ex-wife or something like that about a past argument, as well as a general warning to be safe, which we will immediately disregard. You pull up to the police site, you grab a radio, and you head on into them spooky woods for a wild and rollicking adventure. Ooh boy. Now I somewhat want to beat around the bush here in terms of covering the story because, like, hey, if you want to look it up online or, you know, just play the game yourself and pay the devs, I promise it's worth it if by the end of this video you're interested at all in this property. What I do want to talk about, however, is the large amount of things in this game that I really enjoyed. A lot more than I thought I would, considering I picked this thing up with no real expectations and for pretty cheap. What I will say about the story, though, is, well, kind of basic. It still has some interesting bits in it, and towards the end I would even border on saying that, to me at least, it was genuinely investing. What starts as a rather common opening quickly turns into a spiral of the main character becoming more and more aggressive with everybody around him and panicked and clearly fighting through some mental trauma, which is pretty easy to see coming, but cool nonetheless. You could clearly tell the team wanted to do a lot more with this story than they had to, and while not amazing by any means or a pinnacle of video game writing, it's still pretty good. The relationship between the main character, his ex, and his dog are fleshed out surprisingly well by the end, and spanning multiple quiet moments and phone calls between all the spooks and atmosphere, you really get a feel of Ellis and his life. By the end of it, I found myself caring a lot about the cast and being kind of deeply invested into a game that I thought hours before would be a cheap cash grab, and like, hey, that's kind of nice to have. Gameplay. So what else is there if not the story to keep you invested in this game, you ask? Well, for starters, this game has a really good atmosphere, like, really good. It frequently makes you feel on edge or invested. The use of the forest is pretty good paired with the enemies being these like grotesque, hard to make out, quick moving shapes that you can barely stop from killing you. The pitch blackness of it all mixed with the minimal music or sounds beside the occasional crunching of twigs or leaves, knowing that something is just outside of sight, is all very good to me, especially since this game tends to go on long stretches without any conflict. Because of this, there's a large amount of quiet in the game between encounters, giving you time to cool off and time to become extra paranoid about something being out there, waiting and watching your every move. When the creepy critters that actually do lie in the forest attack, I also like how impossible to really make out they are. At best, you can really only see them for brief flashes in the light or with night vision. Even then, they move in such a weird, jerky, and unnatural way that it's like pretty neat. When these weird, abnormal tree monsters do attack you, though, you have to fight them off by shining your flashlight on them, a la Alan Wake, directed by wherever Bullet, your dog, is pointing. This is, in theory, pretty neat until you realize how buggy and unresponsive it is, causing quite a good few deaths that were triggered by my doggo not pointing in the right direction fast enough before I got my booty destroyed. Besides that, though, the other big gameplay thing is puzzles. The main gimmick, I guess you could call it that, is a tape recorder, which you watch videotapes on to find solutions to puzzles in the outside world. Some of these tapes have the ability to rewind time, allowing you to clear rubble or make paths for yourself, adding another layer of depth to the puzzle system, which is a pretty neat idea. The only negative part is that at no point does this idea feel fully fleshed out or used to a degree I would like to see. It just really feels like they could have done more with this element. that's not to say it's bad. In fact, if anything, it means I liked it enough to wish there was more of it in the game. Regardless of all that, however, there is still some amazing set pieces to keep you interested in this game, having the spooky dark forest slowly open up to become a trippy, dreamlike haze near the end, eventually ending at a big old house like the one in the movie near the end of the game. All of the dreamlike sequences up to this point are pretty great, doing some rather neat, tricky things to you as the player and providing some necessary backstory for our main character, all of which explains why our main boy Ellis is kind of a dick. Another big thing that shifts during this time is how the game takes its main fighting mechanic and changes it up, having enemies now kill you when you use your flashlight. To counteract this, you have to start switching to night vision mode on your video camera and moving around while only looking at the screen on that. This leads to incredibly tense moments of slowly sneaking around large enemies that will kill you on sight, and towards the end, this is only amplified by being inside of a close confined house. In honesty, the house is what sold me on this game. Up until it showed up, everything else was, okay. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like particularly impressive or anything. Nothing really stood out. But the moment you enter the house, things just start to feel different. That's when the game made me realize that this team wanted to do a lot more than the bare minimum with this, and given appropriate time and budget and, the ability to work on this a little bit longer, they probably would have made something that's pretty dang good. The house itself is like a maze. You can hear constant movement around you, underneath the floorboards, above you, that type of thing, and it just all adds to this tension as you're navigating by walking around, staring at the ground and following lines to safety, avoiding the other big monsters just outside of you coming and attacking you. It's great. It's kind of amazing how in such a short time they give you this house with a decent amount of character and environment that it made the hair on the back of my neck stand on edge. I genuinely wish more of this game was set in the house, because it really sets it apart by making it do all this like creepy, spooky stuff to you. Like all the ghosts and all the monsters are just outside of you and you just experience it, and you're constantly on edge, and it's all close quarters. It's really, really good. It's really good. It's phenomenal as an experience to have dealt with that. So, anyway, tangent aside.
Conclusion.
Overall, I'm pretty happy with this game, which is part of why I'm even bringing it to attention here. I think showing off forgotten or looked over experiences like this is valuable, as often smaller games, especially horror games, get forgotten to the sands of time despite doing some pretty neat things. If anything I have said in this video appeals to you, or you have any interest in a title like this, go ahead and support it. Just because it's not perfect in every way doesn't mean the team didn't work hard to create something of value. This is an experience that I do genuinely think I'm going to remember down the line and enjoy. I really enjoyed it the first time through, and I don't know if I'd play it again right away, but I could see myself settling down sometime in the future and playing this game with a nice cup of cocoa. It's one of those good comfort horror games I love so much. It wasn't the best horror game I've ever played, but with everything it tried, I was kind of surprised along the way and engaged almost non-stop. If you're looking for a nice little spooky horror game, this here is a pretty dang good swing, in my humble opinion. Then again, I'm just some man on the internet, dog, and well, what the hell do I know?